Welcome to the Dankertarians podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I am exhausted.
You're Bo Brown. You're not exhausted.
I am Bo Brown, and Bo Brown is exhausted. I've been doing ballot access shit all weekend. Got to take a break and talk to Mr. Paul Stanton with Matt Crum, and Matt Crum has enjoyed his weekend, mostly in air conditioning and doing very little physical labor, just connected to machines, whereas I have been busting my ass in the rain. Just want to let you know that I was more of an activist than you this weekend.
I did a lot of cleaning, a lot of Airbnb cleaning, if that counts. So it's my least favorite thing. But
talk to me about the conversation with Paul Stanton. I'm exhausted. What else do we need to do?
As far as it was my first time meeting Paul, he was very candid. It was really fun to talk to, in my opinion. He definitely just told it like it was. It's cool to hear a little bit about what was going on in Florida. That was enjoyable. He had a lot to say about Augustus, Invictus, and Austin Petersen. What were your thoughts on some of those subjects?
I thought what I liked most about Paul was that he made a really clear, articulate argument for the legalization of all drugs. And I don't hear that very often, especially from libertarian candidates. I know that there are those who do it, right?
And especially from libertarian candidates that have never used drugs.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's interesting. I don't know that matters, because the thrust of his argument is that there's a moral side to ending the war on drugs. It's not just degeneracy. It's not people that want to smoke weed. It's not just wanting to use drugs. There's so much to it. And when you hear a libertarian articulate that as a candidate, for me, it's inspiring. It's encouraging. I see that and I feel empowered to continue to work for the Libertarian Party. So that's exciting. I like to see that in candidates.
Yeah, I think the nice part about him not using drugs before is that people all of a sudden just always strawman it as a cop-out. Like, oh, he's making a moral argument, but he actually it's just libertarians are just Republicans that smoke pot, that whole stereotype.
Or he's just a degenerate, just a libertine.
Right. Yeah.
But I like that he made the argument that way. I also enjoyed that he was so clearly and adamantly against white nationalism. And it's unfortunate that we have to say that as libertarians, that it's encouraging to see someone in the public light denounce white nationalism.
Yeah, and no one seems to have had to. There's not another state that I think it's been so clearly prevalent in other than Florida, and so that was really interesting to hear what's going on with that, what his actual dealings with it was, because even for me, like some of the other folks that he had mentioned, Ramsey being one of them, like I hear different things. Is he a white nationalist? Is he not? Like these various things, and he definitely summed everything up for me, I think, well, with things that seem pretty factual. So,
yeah, honest word. The only part I quibbled with him on is when he talks about partisanship. I think that there's a longer conversation there. I hope we get him back on soon. I want to talk to him about his thoughts on getting libertarians in office. I think that there's more to explore there. But yeah, looking forward to talking to him soon. Looking forward to talking about local candidates in Florida right now. I forget his name. Let me look it up. Check the professionalism here. Let me look this guy up. Well, do you remember who I'm talking about?
The Pakistani, was he Pakistani or Iranian? Iranian.
I just liked his page. Wow. Shit, I can't find it. No, I believe he's an immigrant, but he's running for District 5 in Florida, and he's running as a libertarian. Randy Weissman is running for governor in Florida. He's running as a libertarian. There are several other candidates, and looking forward to having more local candidates on the podcast to get their message out and try to destroy this duopoly. That's all I got for you guys. Enjoy. Come back, listen, like, and share. Thanks.
Cheers.
Peace. A little bit about what it takes to be a libertarian candidate on the local level.
Libertarian candidate at the local level. I'll be honest, I've only done it at the state level, though I am helping others campaign. Really, to be a libertarian candidate, it's just like every other candidate. You have to, believe in your message. You have to convince other people to believe in your message, and you need to have, people in your own inner circles who are willing to go out and help you, and especially for local elections, knock on doors, talk to people. You need to be involved in your community. You need to be able to interject into all the different communities within that jurisdiction or within that district. It's really, when it comes down to it, it's just like everyone else. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say that you can't win as a libertarian candidate. The reason why, and this isn't going to be popular, but the reason why libertarians don't win elections is there aren't very many of us, and we're not very good.
Well, one of the things that I see a lot with libertarian candidates at the state and local level, at all levels, is this hesitancy to make a strong argument for some of our more unpopular or more controversial positions, like full drug legalization. I heard your interview, I think it was done with Fox, where you talked about why drugs should be legal. How does a libertarian candidate kind of wade into those controversial waters? How do you were very successful in articulating that message in a professional way. Talk about the courage it takes to do that.
Well, the situation for me, I think, is different than others who are fighting prohibition. I've never done an illicit drug in my life. I've never had any really interest in doing so. I really started opposing the drug war when I had to, rescue a friend of mine and her family from a trap house up in Michigan. It was ridiculous, and they couldn't call the police because of drug issues. However, they were kidnapped at gunpoint, and they should be able to call the police. It's ridiculous. So when you start to tell stories and you start to explain things to people that, hey, I don't like drugs. Drugs are horrible, but this is the world we're creating when we make it illegal. I want to get rid of drugs. I want drugs off the street. I don't want people to use drugs. And believe me, I really mean that when I say it. But what's the best way to go about it? What's the best way to go about it that doesn't result in, unintentional consequences? What's the most peaceful way to go about it? And taking it from that approach, where, hey, maybe friends and family should be able to go in and help people without fear of the police or CPS or whatever coming and ruining their lives. Maybe we should let those kind of things happen, but we don't. To go back to the story about my friend up in Michigan, this was right outside of Flint, by the way. That's a popular place, at least a year or two ago. But yeah, I don't think I'm welcome back there, mind you. But seriously, there was a good friend of mine up there. She, her husband had a drug addiction, and it was awful. And he ended up going into debt. He tried to get out of debt with loans and gambling, and none of that worked. Next thing you know, he, my friend, and their 1-year-old child are trapped in a house against their will. It's ridiculous. So. Couldn't call the cops because that would involve, jail, records, CPS. Everyone's life would have been ruined. So I went, I rescued them, brought them to the family, in a different state, and helped them get their lives together. But but then her husband still had the drug addiction, still had the problem, and my hands were pretty tied. It's not like I could, tell the world. It's not like I could, help push him into rehab. All the options that would have been available to me were drugs less prohibited, or were if we did not use violence against addicts, against sick people, I would have been able to help them more. And it was a real big moment for me. It was, and so really we just need to explain to people that this is not the right way. The drug war is failed. The drug war fails the addicts. The drug war fails our community. And if they are serious about ending drugs, we need to go about it the right way. Look at alcohol prohibition, for example. For alcohol prohibition, we got organized crime. And now we handle alcoholism, which is still a problem. We handle alcoholism as a medical issue or a mental health issue. And friends and family can be involved. And, there's that one alcoholic guy, well, he needs help. Let's have an intervention. We can do that. When it comes to drugs, we can't do that. And at least not as easily, not without, government violence being involved.
Yeah, and it's interesting when I hear you make that argument, that articulation, it seems clear to me that every single libertarian is going to jump on that, right? Ending the drug war has so many benefits, both economic and social. It's unclear to me why someone would deprioritize the drug war in the liberty movement.
But people usually don't care about that, though. That's the thing. If that's not their issue, they don't care about it. What they care about is keeping drugs off the streets. What they care about is keeping, drug dealers and drug addicts away from their children. That's what they care about. And so you have to explain it from what they care about. They don't care about, an individual's right to enjoy themselves any way they please. So why bother even making that argument? Mm-hmm. They probably don't even care about the economic or social benefits from legalizing, such as what we've seen in, a few states now, or Portugal even. What they care about is, drug prohibition or ending drug addiction. And so our problem is not explaining all the other benefits of ending the drug war. Our problem is explaining how our solutions solve the problems they care about most.
Yeah, I mean, and I live in Nashville, in an urban part of Nashville, in the city core rather, and one of the biggest pieces here is gang violence in some of these areas, and I'm being able to convey that message of people are getting killed in every city in this country that's gang affiliated, and that money is coming from drugs primarily, but I think that's a good thing to be able to empathize with where people are coming from, what issues affect them directly, and coming at it from that angle. Were you a libertarian whenever you were went up to Michigan and related to that story, or what drove you into? Was that something? Was the libertarian philosophy something that drove your position on drugs, or did that help you find libertarianism? I had already seen the light, if you will. I already was against drug prohibition before I had to go up to Michigan, fortunately. But I never, it's one of those things you have to see firsthand before you truly appreciate it. And for me, I saw it firsthand, and it disgusted me. I mean, imagine, typically if you have a friend who's, being held at gunpoint, what do? You call the police, they get a SWAT team, they go out and rescue them. Done. Easy. And that's usually what people associate, call the cops. That's what I associate with it. And I'm a crazy libertarian. Mm-hmm. But when you have your only typical avenue for safety taken away from you because of drug prohibition, it was definitely a come to Jesus moment for me there. I never realized the helplessness involved in the victims of the drug war. But as far as how I found the liberty movement, I don't know how many libertarians like it when I say this, but it was Ron Paul.
You're going to be, I think that's a majority position, at least in the Libertarian Party right now. I think you're safe.
Yeah, among millennials, okay. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I was in the same boat, so.
Yeah, I was actually in the Army at the time, came back from war, saw a bunch of my friends die, and that wasn't fun. And I was very conservative, and then there was this one crazy old guy talking about, hey, maybe we shouldn't bomb everyone. Maybe we shouldn't go send people to go die in foreign countries for no apparent reason. and that kind of stuck with me. I got involved in YAL, SFL. I was up in Indiana at the time. Went to some SFL conferences. It was a good time. Then I went to, so true story, what got me to the Libertarian Party, though, and actually identifying as a libertarian instead of a liberty conservative, as I did, was I went to CPAC to support Ron Paul's 2012 race. And while I was up there, I heard a guy named Gary Johnson, and I talked to a guy named Gary Johnson. And he came from a position of pure compassion, making a very strong case for liberty. And after chatting with him and after hearing him speak, and his main focus was things like the drug war and fixing in different economic issues from a point of compassion, instead of ending the Fed, which I do want to do, but it's not my biggest issue. And, I really, at that moment, I realized that, hey, I might be a libertarian. So Ron Paul helped me see the light, but what really got me to be a libertarian and join the libertarian movement was, was Gary Johnson himself. Other people were strong influences on me for that journey as well, like the Free Keene folks up in New Hampshire. Adam Kokesh, Adam, a fellow veteran of mine, he and I both were in the IVAW at one point too. We actually did very similar activism, completely independently. But I got to meet him for the first time last year. That was fun.
Right on. So I'm interested in your thoughts on partisanship. So you once consider yourself kind of a liberty conservative. I assume that means you would have self-identified as a Republican. When you change over to the Libertarian Party, do you think there's a meaningful change there? Do you think there's a meaningful distinction between the Republican Liberty Caucus or whatever it's called, the Rand Paulites, and true partisan libertarians?
Definitely, I do. Here in Florida, for example, we have an RLC guy running for governor, last name of White, and he is the liberty conservative, if you will, mm-hmm. and he's big on certain economic issues he's good on, like he wants to sell off state land, and we have a lot of it here in Florida. That's and it's actually caused a lot of problems as far as tragedy of the commons or public land neglect. A lot of the invasive species issues that we've had here in Florida are because like here in my county, about half of the county is owned by the state. And do you think they make sure that there aren't any, Cuban tree frogs or any other crazy invasive species there? Of course not. They don't care. Right. They don't have the time, the money, the staffing to do that. And so, they're good on, economic issues, of course, or usually. There are some distinctions, though, I think, between the RLC economic issues and then the Libertarian Party economic issues. But then you have the guy who's running as a libertarian here, a guy by the name of Randy Wiseman.
Randy Wiseman, good dude. I've talked to him a couple times on Facebook. Good dude.
Yes, Randy is not as good on the economic issues, I don't think, or at least mm-hmm. some of the economic issues, at least not from a Republican perspective. But one of the big things on is White is a law and order, enforce the law kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Randy Wiseman's like, hey, let's legalize all drugs. I mean, seriously, why haven't we done that yet? But Randy's like, I don't want to get rid of public libraries, but
it seems to be like a question of prioritization. Right?
Exactly, and so for guys like Randy, his prioritization is ending the most some of the worst offenders of liberty in our society here in Florida. Like the drug war is a big one. Republican Liberty Caucus, it's more about certain niche economic issues that Republicans care about.
It seems to Yeah, it seems a lot of times when I hear these liberty Republicans speak, I just think this is just Ronald Reagan. And if Ronald Reagan were to run today as a Republican, I'd say that he is one of the better Republicans. But that doesn't make them a libertarian. There are meaningful distinctions. And I'm skeptical that someone who has liberty on the mind and in their platform can make as much of a change as a Republican as they can as a libertarian, simply because I think the most oppressive point of the state is the duopoly.
Yes, well, definitely. A lot of states, and Florida's no exception, have various rules. Like plurality voting, for example, is a big one, which makes the third party not as I don't want to say viable, but it makes it much more difficult,
more vulnerable,
much more vulnerable to the duopoly. But I don't know. I'm not so much against the two major parties as far as I'm against the way that they use government to stay in power. Republicans and Democrats don't really stand for anything. They're just voting coalitions that magically form every few years.
Right.
People come and they go, and it doesn't really matter because they don't really believe in anything. And so that's a huge advantage that they have right there. Republicans, Democrats, believe it or not, they better represent most people because most people are statists. They're not libertarians. As much as we look at cherry-picked polling and we convince ourselves that everyone's libertarian, they're not. Most people at least want something from government, and libertarians don't necessarily offer that. And if people did turn libertarian, if everyone turned libertarian, the two major parties would turn libertarian too. That's just how it is. And then, so what we have to do as libertarians is we have to push the envelope. We have to, we have to push candidates. We have to galvanize a movement, and we have to push issues to say, hey, why not try liberty? And we've actually been very effective at it since our founding. Look at a lot of the issues that we've been pushing, successfully, mind you, when it comes to things such as gun rights, when it comes to things such as LGBT equality. I mean, these are big issues that libertarians have been pushing, since their founding. And lo and behold, guns are much more legal and prevalent than they were back in '71, minus automatic weapons. That's another story. Sure. But gun laws through most states have actually liberalized. And by that I mean they've become more open.
More free. Yeah.
More free.
So do you see yourself as more, I mean, there's this conversation that's being had about candidates being put forward to be activists versus candidates to win. I mean, maybe that could be rephrased a little bit better. But do you see yourself as more of an activist trying to get more people to believe that libertarian stance, or do you think like we legitimately have a chance to get people to win, where you're at in Florida and these other places, or is it a combination of the two?
Well, I'm an activist first. Let's be honest. Let's say we get one libertarian in Congress. What's that going to do? Nothing. Let's say we get 10 libertarians in Congress. Still probably nothing. But let's say we can have a successful presidential candidate who goes and says, hey, maybe we shouldn't keep marijuana. Maybe we should rethink the drug war. And, let's say he only gets 3% of the vote. Honestly, I think that's much more effective than getting one or two ineffective, congressmen or one or two ineffective state legislatures. But winning elections is part of the process for activism and changing the minds. And, and really for the Libertarian Party, our goal isn't to win elections. It's not. It's to push the statement of principles. And winning elections is oftentimes just part of that. Because keep in mind, once we win, once the libertarian message is the de facto standard or the majority, we're probably going to become defunct because it's going to be adopted by the Republicans and the Democrats. So, it's kind of one of those enigmas. Why are you taking over the state? To end it?
I'm not sure that the Republicans or the Democrats would start adopting our platforms. I mean, maybe some certain I can see the Democrats working with us on eliminating the drug war. That's an obvious thing, and I can see the Republicans working with us on eliminating business regulations. That also, it's kind of an intuitive thing, but that's on rhetoric. I've yet to see any real kind of meaningful movement from either the Democrats or the Republicans on those issues. I'm not convinced that they would just kind of jump on our bandwagon and start crafting or articulating policy proposals that match up with libertarian principles. I think they'd go ahead.
No, you're right. You're right. But the rhetoric comes first. Once the rhetoric is around long enough, they're going to have to act, or they get replaced. That's just how it works.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure that I see that, because we've got these sorts of senators and Republicans at the national level. We can pick from McCain, McConnell, Nancy Pelosi. We can pick from out of a hat. There's so many of them who have been there for most of their adult lives, most of their working lives, and they're the sorts of individuals that will discuss minimum wage and what an individual who needs to work that sort of job, who would work in a restaurant where there is minimum wage, they haven't worked that sort of job ever in their lives. They have no contextual backing for it. And the reason they're able to still control policy is because they keep getting voted back in despite acting against their own rhetoric. So I'm not sure. I think that it would be a little bit more meaningful if we got one libertarian congressman. I think that would mean something, and maybe that's utopian of me. Maybe it's Pollyannish.
Well, no, it does mean something, but it's not going to mean much as far as direct policy change. What it's going to mean is, we'll be a force to be reckoned with. It means that our issues get taken more seriously, and even if they're just regurgitating our rhetoric, that's still a win. That's a huge win. That's
a fair point. So we just had two people leave. You got experience, some real close experience with one. Mr. Augustus Invictus just left the Libertarian Party for the Republican Party, and you defeated Augustus for the Libertarian nomination in Florida. That's correct, yeah?
Yes.
Talk about that. Talk about your experience with Augustus as a candidate. I only know him as a social media sensation, right? I only know him as who he is now. Was there a difference?
It was, there's a whole long crazy story with that guy, involving a lot of people here in Florida, and the story's not really that good.
Oh, dang it! I was hoping for some good stuff.
Well, okay. Our definition of good is different. But so one of the big things was he was running on a shoestring budget, and it was a really weird situation, a really weird race. A lot of his support actually came because of opposition of, it was inter-party politics. It was, the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of stuff. And, he had a lot of enemies. So his enemy's enemies suddenly had a friend. And it was really weird. It was really weird to see what people's priorities were here. I mean, even party officers, what some of their priorities were was weird and rather disturbing, to say the least. He's of course a neo-Nazi, at least a former member of the National Socialist Movement. You can go on the One People's Project, and they did a leak from, I think, like 2009 or 2011, or it was some years ago when he was back in law school. So he was an official card-carrying member of a neo-Nazi group. Now he's a member of another one. But that isn't enough. People kept giving him, the benefit of the doubt. even beyond any doubt. He wrote a paper on eugenics. A big thing on his website was that the federal government had failed because it ended the eugenics program, and that didn't come off his website until like a week or two, and was replaced with some garbage about like degeneracy or whatever. He's called his political opponents Untermenschen. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not.
No.
It's what the Nazis used to call Jews homosexual, or Jews gays, excuse me, and other people that that they didn't like. It means like the underman.
Of course.
He I can't make some of this stuff up. He's an officer in a group called the American Guard, which here in Florida, and then he's in all sorts of other different groups now too, like the Proud Boys. I think he's part of like I know he does stuff with Kyle Chapman and stuff. I mean, come on, guys, really?
Right. Well, that's what I wanted to get your thoughts on. It took a long time, or what seemed to be a long time to me, for Augustus Invictus to not be a libertarian. And from everything I know about him, everything I've read, everything I've seen from him, there's no libertarianism. I don't get the argument for allowing those sorts of thoughts and that sort of logic in the Libertarian Party. It seems antithetical to me. Why do you think it took so long for him to bounce?
Because people were not willing to speak against him, and people who did speak against him were treated as pariahs, myself included. You have a situation right now where the county party down in Orange County, the Libertarian Party of Orange County, their chair, Derek Ryan, stated plainly to me that he refused to take a stand. He said, "Oh, he's not a fascist." The treasurer there, Greg Peel, who actually donated hundreds of dollars to my campaign, said, "Hey, well, he's useful." This guy, he's a neo-Nazi who's threatening people. I mean, he threatened me on multiple occasions. There's one person down in Orlando a libertarian in Orlando who is a supporter of my Senate campaign, who refuses to participate because she received death threats. And she's not going to submit herself to that. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Why would one do that if they're trying to be in a party that promotes liberty, that promotes equality and all of these great things that we believe in?
Yeah, a lot of people come here for the peace aspect of the party, non-interventionalist peace aspect,
Right, but a lot of folks really at the end of the day don't care. They're either so desperate for attention, or they want to be inclusive of everyone, even violent neo-Nazis who chase everyone away.
So I have a quick question. Like, from my perspective, as I didn't really hear about him until maybe at the beginning of the year, whenever he was running, I heard, and I'd read some stuff about him. Is he serious? Like, is he somebody that actually believes what he's saying, or is he a character to be able to gain promotion? What's your take on that?
If he's a character to gain promotion, he's not very good at it.
I know his name, though, at least.
You do know his name, but it doesn't translate very well into money at the end of the day. You know his name, but it doesn't translate into support. He does have a lot of supporters here in Florida. I'm not going to lie. 1,000 people voted for him. Many of them probably were voting for the funny name on a lark. Many of them were not. He has supporters, but most of those supporters are going to be quiet about it. And I don't want to give him money.
They voted for his accent. I really like. Yeah, that's why it was. So.
Oh my God, he's so difficult to listen to. He's so tough to listen to. That's why. Like, I haven't listened to I haven't watched all of his videos. I haven't listened to all of his things. I got into an argument with someone, of course, on Facebook about Augustus Invictus, and they said, well, he's said, X, Y, and Z, and it was essentially a libertarian argument. And I was like, I've never seen that. They gave me the link. I got 20 seconds into the interview. I was like, fuck this shit. I can't do it. I can't deal with this dude's voice. I can only read.
That's why I was like thinking maybe this is like maybe he is doing it just for a ruse, because it's like, who just creates an accent to speak on video and then speak in a normal voice?
It's not just on video; it's also in speeches. Like, he has a couple different accents, and there's various theories as to why. He says it's just his voice because he's learned so many foreign languages. But if you look at some of his earlier stuff too, where he's gone by different. I'm not sure if pseudonym's the right word, but I think it's the appropriate one. I forget what the name is, like Ofan or something, where he wrote a book about himself. Pretty much, he labeled it as an autobiography. And, had swastikas and stuff on it, and like he says that he sacrificed a goat to put the spirit of the devil into his son, and talked to like a demon or the devil or something, and talked about how Austin Gillespie, his original name, had died. He also had different. He also had that other character on YouTube, and the accents are different. There's at least 3 different accents I've heard. There's the Civil War general that we. There's the. Then there's like the possessed Civil War general almost that you sometimes hear, and then there's the kid from Ohio that tries a little hard.
Well, that's I was so surprised when I first heard him, because he's from Ohio. I'm from Ohio. We should sound similar, right? I mean, if that's where we learn to speak, we should sound something like one another. We don't. Like, he should sound a lot more like someone from Ohio than he does. It has to be an act. It has to be.
Well, people. I myself have changed my accents based on where I've lived. I was in the Army and lived in the South a lot. And in the, I lived down in Tennessee, for example, is one of the places. And people in the South, if you have too much of a Northern accent, they hear that as being arrogant. And so. So slipping into a bit of I used to slip into a bit of a Southern twang when I spoke, and then I sounded normal to people, and it was great.
So you're saying that Augustus had spent some time in the 1600s, and he's adapted his accent.
I'm not going to speculate on that. But
so go ahead.
But it's really crazy. If you have some free time on YouTube or whatever, you can go and look at. You can listen to different things. Like, sometimes in interviews, he'll use his his like normal voice. For speeches, he'll do this other one, and then some of the older ones where he's usually under the name of like Ofan, or I can't remember what the name was, or apologize for that, or
we'll
like the LSD.
We'll link it. It's fine.
So the LSD journal type, so that's a different one.
Nice. Do you think that he's going to have as much, what little success he's had in the Libertarian Party? And I think he's had some with his movement. Do you think he's going to stay as relevant as he is, or is he going to just drop completely off the map now that he's moved to the Republican Party?
Well, there are a lot more Republicans than Libertarians. So he went from being a medium-sized fish in a tiny pond to being a tiny fish in a big pond. Mm-hmm. But that aside, the Republicans are better at dealing with Nazis than the Libertarians are. Just that's what it is. I'm being serious. Yeah. Like for example, in Louisiana, the party infrastructure is very adamant that David Duke does not represent them, and they've spoken out very clearly and very loudly against David Duke. Party leadership all up and down in Louisiana. Here in Florida, not so much, even though the rhetoric was very similar between the two of them, even though they were both running for Senate in the same year.
But won't people just attribute that to Florida, though? I mean, I'm just going to be honest, like, no offense or whatever, but Florida is an interesting place. You know, there's a lot of diversity and a lot of interesting things that happen there in the news.
A lot of that has to do with our sunshine laws. So that's the thing. So a lot. We're also a very large state with transparent criminal records, which makes you get to hear all about them in the news. I don't think it's Florida. I really like it here. Very clearly, most people are not neo-Nazis and do not have silly accents. Well, have intentionally silly accents.
There are more silly accents than there are neo-Nazis.
And not everyone's doing bath salts and all that other stuff that's in the news, right?
Unfortunately.
Well, okay. If you're talking about the so-called zombie on bath salts, that actually was not true. The toxicology report came in, and he was not on bath salts. That was just the media going crazy on their drug paranoia, pro-drug rants.
I see. See, it's funny though that this is one of the frustrating pieces of the media is you hear the first part of it. And if it ends up not being true, you don't hear that. Like, it's done. Yeah, but that's another
corrections.
topic.
Corrections rarely get publicized.
Or if they do, it's just not. Yeah, it's quiet. Like, and that way they can point back to it. Oh, we did say something about it, but we didn't put it on 5 o'clock news.
I mean, bath salts are awful. Don't get me wrong, but it's not gonna make you eat people. That was just drug scare.
Yeah,
they're not. They're not as. I don't think they're as intense as everybody makes them out to be. I didn't think they were.
Have you done?
I don't think they're good for you.
No, they're certainly not good for you. Absolutely not.
But you've done bath salts.
Yeah. You
have.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I enjoyed myself. I thought it was a good trip. Yeah, I had a good time.
I have a lot of other questions. That's a different interview. We'll do that.
Right on. Oh, well, I did want to talk to you about the other individual that just left for the Republican Party, Austin Petersen, and I wonder if you had any thoughts on that. Because just for my own part, I was disappointed that the Libertarian Party lost such an effective communicator for whatever position that he takes. I think he's a really good candidate. But long term, I don't know. I think this is actually better for the party because I'm not sure that he accepts the principles. I'm not sure that he would argue for the principles in the way that someone like you did for the complete legalization of drugs and couched your argument in the way that you did. I don't think that he's an individual who would or maybe could do that.
He was a bit of a toxic individual, both he and a lot of his supporters that he refused to try to rein in at all. So I'm not too sad to see him go, and I'm not too sad to see others leave too. Invictus, for example, was one of his supporters, and Petersen apparently was buddies with him, so that was a thing. I personally had issue with Petersen. He actually at convention he promised me an endorsement for the Senate race. And then he stood me up the next morning. Apparently he went out drinking with Invictus or something like that. And next thing you know, he didn't give me an endorsement. Called him out on it. He said Invictus is a gentleman and a scholar. That's on Twitter, by the way.
We found it.
Seen that.
Wow. We actually we just shared an article from a guy named John Hudak and the Rise of the Anarcho-Statist Part 3. And he talks a lot about that very tweet. And the connection between AP and Augustus Invictus, the gentleman, the scholar thing. I was unaware that AP had told you he'd give you an endorsement and then backed out of the deal. That's not cool.
Yeah, and then and then a lot of the big AP supporters here in Florida have either been supporters of Invictus or have been cozy with him and other people, for example. Various things I mentioned the American Guard, which is a white supremacist group. The Florida vice president of the American Guard, his name is Ryan Ramsey, and he's actually on the executive committee here for the Florida Libertarian Party. He's also the chair of the Bradford County Libertarian Party. He's also the founder of the Libertarian Party Veterans Caucus, which is why you see like crazy stuff on there that doesn't seem to really relate to veterans issues. And then you have guys like, then you have Austin Peterson's guys like, say, Zach Garrettson, for example, who is the vice chair of the Libertarian Party Veterans Caucus. You know, their association. I'm not trying to say, Zach helped on my campaign. I'm not going to, speak poorly of him, but there are a lot of bad associations in Florida, and it's not something that would be tolerated in the Republican Party or really any other party.
It's tricky. It's that guilt by association is tricky, I think. And I think it's extra tricky with libertarians because we do have this sort of inclination to let anyone in. Just we're going to be, not only are we going to be the big tent party, we're the biggest tent there is, and there's not even a fucking door. Like everybody's just come the fuck in and we don't care. And I think that's starting, we're starting to see some issues with that.
Right.
Just as you suggest, I don't like doing guilt by association. You can have sort of relationships, you have to work with certain individuals, those sorts of things happen. You can't be held responsible for what other people do. But there seems to be a line, right? There's a fucking limit. When you see fascism, white nationalism, you got to stand against that shit. Make a strong denunciation of it.
Right. Then you have the I mentioned the chair of Libertarian Party Orange County, Derek Ryan, for example. He was another big Austin Petersen guy. A lot of the Austin Petersen guys were, supporters of Invictus. A lot of them were supporters of mine. But I think Derek Ryan was actually on my campaign a bit during the primary. So I don't want to speak too poorly of him, but after the primary was over, look at what happened. He refused. He said straight up he refused to stand against him, and it's an issue. I stand against white nationalists is like the unspeakable phrase here in Florida for the Libertarian Party, and it's disgusting.
That's so baffling because that seems to be such a. That shouldn't have to be something you say. The leadership of whatever party you're in or whatever organization should already have made this clear.
Yeah,
we stand.
It's because the Libertarian Party is being taken over by leftists.
Right, of course, of course.
Well, here in Florida, another thing, our current chairman, Marcos Morales, he got the public endorsement of Ryan Ramsey. And posted it on his website as like his proud list of endorsements. And Ryan's firmly on his side in the executive committee meetings. So, it's ridiculous. No one's willing to take a stand because they can benefit from not, so they don't. It's disgusting.
Do you think that Austin Petersen bouncing and I'm only going to talk about Austin here because I don't think there's any bad to Augustus leaving. I don't think anyone could make the argument that it'd be better to have him in the party. But there are some justifiable arguments for being beneficial to the LP if AP were to have stayed. Do you think that a lot of his supporters are going to kind of bounce from the party and not just this one election, but they're going to take off and they'll become Republicans and they'll just follow AP in that cult of personality?
Well, I don't really think that would be too bad. Let's look at the actual numbers here. Austin Petersen got about 21% of the vote, was it?
I believe so.
Of the delegates. He lost to Noda in his home state. If you look at the actual for the first ballot in Missouri, for the delegates in Missouri, I think he only got like half of them. I don't see him as ever really being very viable unless he starts over. Really, he wasn't. He was the guy. He had a cult of personality, and he wasn't Gary Johnson.
That's
all he really had going for him, and he still only got 21% of the delegates. Do you think that his supporters believe in the libertarian principles? I don't see it much. I don't see, I don't know. It depends. It depends on what you call the libertarian principles. Austin Petersen was really big on certain wedge issues within the Libertarian Party, such as the NAP and such as such as baking cakes,
Yeah.
if you will, is, and a lot of that is, is a question of priorities. I don't think that, you should have to do anything for anyone that you don't want to, but I think it's kind of awful to make that a number one priority. So, but when you look at other things such as war, or even the drug war, he wasn't very good on those issues. Not as good as everyone else on the stage. I mean, literally everyone else on the stage was more libertarian than Austin Petersen.
But yet, solely because of that cake issue, Gary's not libertarian. Austin is the true libertarian. He should have been nominated, according to the supporters.
Yes, and that's completely ridiculous, especially when a lot of those people ended up voting for Trump. And keep in mind, Trump was openly for expanding the Civil Rights Act.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was on record for saying he wants to expand it to include LGBT folks.
It's interesting. Kind of pokes a hole in an argument there.
Yeah.
Well, it was before the election anyway.
Sure.
But right. These people, aren't consistent. They're partisans. They're partisan hacks. That's all there is to it. A lot of Austin's supporters, at least here in Florida, did go off and support the Gary Johnson campaign, and have been part of the Libertarian Party and supporting the Libertarian Party here. We shouldn't, paint too broad a brush.
Sure.
Yeah. So, but I'm not sad to see him go. The cult of personality was creepy. It was just creepy, and it wasn't consistent, and it wasn't principled.
What's your money on Alicia Dern's odds against him? Assuming that, let's assume that AP. You don't think he'll win the primary at all?
No. There's a. Last I heard, there are two people that are interesting on the Republican side. There's the AG who might be running, and then there is a sitting state senator who is a part of Ron Paul's campaign in Missouri. The true liberty Republican who actually has a record, and
he's gonna get out liberty Republican.
Yeah, he's gonna get out liberty Republican. He's gonna get out establishment Republican. I don't think he has much of a chance. I mean, he's a decent fundraiser by libertarian standards.
Right.
But when you start looking at the Republican standards, no way.
Yeah.
One wonders why he left, right? I do. I truly wonder why he left, because it's not as though this conversation that we're having isn't something that he and his team aren't going to be having. They're making a rational decision, right? They're looking at some numbers that tell them he's got a better chance at whatever his goals are with the Republican Party. I just don't see it.
Gary threw that gun away, man. Gary threw the gun away. It's over.
Of course.
And just to reemphasize how toxic this guy was, he always has the picture of his gun, always talks about the gun. His people always talk about the gun. I mean, throughout how toxic can you get, man? He threw your toy gun away because he stabbed him in the back immediately after giving it to him.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yep.
Yeah. That's nasty. I wasn't in the party at the time. I wasn't really even involved with the Libertarian Party during the convention. I got on because of Gary Johnson. That's why I came into the party, worked on his campaign. So I wasn't really privy to all that fucking dramatic bullshit. And once I started going around to different state conventions and starting to get to meet some of the people that worked on different campaigns and started hearing about all this drama, going back and researching it, it's a wild time, and it is a lot of fun to be a libertarian. And it's enjoyable. There's an excitement to it, and there's movement and activity. And I can't imagine why anyone, particularly someone like AP, who's young, he's what, 35, 36? I don't think he's 40 yet, is he? He's in his mid-30s.
He's 36. He turned 35 last year.
Okay, so this is a 35-year-old individual who is charismatic, who has a lot of the natural skills of being a candidate, and can make a a meaningful, has a meaningful influence in the direction of the party. Why would you ever want to leave that? Why would you ever want to leave the Libertarian Party, where you've got all of this great fun, just enjoyment and excitement in politics, for a Republican Party where they're just going to get pissed at you if you have a little bit of fun. They're going to get pissed at you if you are.
A lot of people were upset with him, though, I think, is what it came down to. And
in the Libertarian Party?
Within the Libertarian Party. I think a lot of people within the Libertarian Party were not going to let him, succeed.
I think that's fair.
If he ran as a Libertarian, I don't even know if he would have won his primary, to be completely honest with you.
Against Alicia Dern?
Against anyone.
Against anyone? Well, it depends, man. I mean, he made his libertarian career attacking the non-aggression principle. It's hard to claim the mantle of libertarian when you're attacking one of our core beliefs.
I mean, partially, and he was going after Gary Johnson, who a lot of people, despite what you see from some of the folks online, like a lot of people still genuinely supported Gary Johnson in a genuine way, like, and coming after those folks and making enemies essentially out of those folks, and not reuniting the party in the same way. He made a few symbolic things, after, but as you talked about it earlier, he did nothing for his supporters to take away the toxicity that he planted originally against Gary and that campaign, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, he told people to support them, or vote for them, but
it was after some nastiness, though.
Yeah, and you know what? It didn't really make a blip on the real news. No one really knew about it. No one heard about it. No one cares. Let's all just move on,
Yeah.
How do you think the Libertarian Party can change that, though? Like, how can we not just reach out to individuals, because I think we all kind of know that. You work within your counties, you get out there, you talk to people. But how can we get more exposure in the media? The only thing that I've seen be successful so far is James Weeks stripping up on stage. That's the only thing I've seen. And I feel like there's another tactic. There's got to be another way. And that's not, dismissing what he did or disagreeing with it. It just so happens that seems to be one of the only ways that the Libertarian Party is able to make a splash in the news. Or we can make a huge fuck up in just communication. We can say, what is Aleppo? Or, we can have one of our candidates go out and speak in glowing terms about our opponents. Like, there's got to be a way to maneuver around that.
So a lot of it is let's just ignore last year.
Okay.
Last year was really hard for a lot of people for a lot of reasons, including my Senate campaign. Well, all the down ticket races here in Florida were really media starved because, come on, Trump was running for president.
It's Trump. Fair. That's a fair point.
The Trump effect just made everything harder last year. So let's just ignore that. In general, the media will cover us if we give them a reason to. Mm-hmm. Us just running as, because we want to fight the man or destroy government or blah, blah, blah. No one cares about that. They're not going to do it. But if you have a fun story for them, or if you have if you have an actual, a strong candidate with a strong story, they'll pick that up. Something that they picked up for me when I wasn't running, because I'm an activist first, just so we're clear. Do you remember the naked body scanners? They still sort of have them, but they don't have anyone in the back room looking at you anymore.
Yeah.
But just suing for me to not get looked at naked, no one would have cared about that. So what I did was, I was like, what would be funny? I should hand out constitutions in protest. To people in line as they wait. Hey, and hand out copies of the Fourth Amendment. Like, here's your rights. You don't have to do this. That kind of stuff. It's like, but I was like, I'm just going to hand out constitutions. Funniest thing ever. And I was a combat veteran back from, the Iraq War, and it was still raging. Even though Obama was president, that was weird.
Yo.
So I asked for permission. They said no. I sued in federal court, and I went to the media. The ACLU helped with this too. Went to the media with combat veteran, sues airport, to hand out constitutions.
Nice.
And that got international coverage. If you read the newspaper, you probably would have seen a blip of it during that time frame. I read about it in a newspaper. I think it was from Mumbai because AP picked it up. So it was a big deal because people cared about a veteran handing out constitutions. Why was he doing that? Why wasn't he allowed to do that? It started a conversation. Locally, I lived up in Indiana at the time. It was all over the local news. It was an interview with me was actually advertised all week long. I was front page of the local city paper. It was syndicated all over the state. The biggest shock jock on the biggest conservative talk news station, had me on and interviewed me and was talking all about it. It was a big deal, and it was because it was something that people cared about at the time, and it was because it was an interesting story from an interesting perspective.
We need to get more libertarian shit like that.
Well, we actually have a candidate down here in Florida that I'm really excited about. His name is Joe Hanoush, and his parents are from Iraq. His parents are Iraqi immigrants. He's actually gone to Iraq to where his parents were from to visit family and stuff, and he's running for Florida House.
The District 25.
I believe so. Yeah. Oh, you already know about him.
I don't know about him. He's one of the many libertarian pages that I've gone through and just I want to know what this guy's doing, this chick's doing, this chick's doing. And so I just typed in the name. But yeah, I see where he is. Yeah, right on.
But yeah, Joe Hanoush, I'm really excited about it because that's an interesting story, especially as things go on with Daesh and things go on with refugees and whatnot. Mm-hmm. What happens to Iraqis when they come here and then they have children? Well, we get libertarian candidates apparently.
Hell yeah!
More of them coming over here. Let's just invite the whole country over. It'll be great.
Hell yeah!
So we had hit on earlier a little bit about the kind of Republican libertarian kind of deal, and then this kind of casting the other side as just being Democrat left. You're just the leftists. How do we come together? How do we work together? Essentially, how can we build a party that's inclusive in an environment right now politically that's so polarizing based off of the past elections and whatnot? Where do we go?
Well, the Libertarian Party, the vast majority of us are what would be considered right libertarians. There are a handful of, say, mutualists that I'd probably classify as left libertarians. I'm sure you know a few of those. But, they're...
Yeah.
Why are you guys laughing? But
I love it.
those are more the exception than the rule. We're very much right libertarians in this party, almost by design. It doesn't make sense for us, though, even as right libertarians, to be on the right, because ultimately what we're about is individual, liberty, individual rights. And we can talk about property norms until we're blue in our face. It's not going to matter until we get the state out of the way.
Right.
But I don't have the perfect solution because I would have used it here in Florida had I, if I did. It was really weird because I guess it's a nationwide thing, but here in Florida especially, it didn't go from we weren't calling people statists anymore. We had people calling folks, commies or leftists. I'm like, what's up with this?
Right.
I want to go back to calling people statists.
Right.
Honest word. So let me ask you, do you have any plans to run for another office in the near future? Are you thinking about a 2018 bid?
I'm not running in 2018. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not running for anything in 2018. I'm not running for anything big in 2018. If there's a bottom of the ticket kind of $25 filing fee that no one else has signed up for by the time it comes around, you'll see my name on there.
Right on.
Just because honestly, a lot of these lower positions like Soil and Water Board or Hospital Authority here in Florida, a lot of those are mosquito control are fairly easy to get. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they're not even contested. You just give $25 and you get your name on the ballot, and you might accidentally win. And if you
just stumble into office.
Well, if you do win, then you need to brush up on Robert's rules and give them parliamentary hell to push your agenda.
Hell fucking yeah.
But but yeah, I'm not running for anything big. I'm focused on helping other people. My biggest focus right now is helping guys like Joe Hanoush, or guys like Kyle. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head right now, but he's running here in Volusia as well.
Right on. And then you had mentioned Randy Weissman before. Are you going to be involved in his campaign for governor?
I was involved in his. I was no, not. I don't plan on it. I was friendly with his campaign, but I think he's been focusing too much on the inter-party politics. When I think he should be focused more on outside of the party and speaking liberty to other people. And so that and other things made me distance myself from his campaign. Randy's a good guy, and I wish him the best, but I don't really plan on participating in his campaign at all.
Right on. I don't have any other questions. Matt Crum, you got anything for him, brother?
I think that's it.